So we begin the readout tonight with the freak show. This weekend was the annual Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, a showcase of just how extreme the once grand old party has become. How extreme, you ask? Well, as NBC News is reporting, Nazis mingled openly at CPAC, spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and finding allies. Yes, you did hear me say Nazis. NBC News noted in previous years, conference organizers have ejected well-known Nazis and white supremacists, such as Nick Fuentes, from CPAC. But this year, racist conspiracy theorists didn't meet any perceptible resistance at the conference where Donald Trump has been the keynote speaker since 2017. CPAC has repeatedly denied it, calling NBC's reporting fake news and grossly manipulative, and even going so far as to smear the NBC News reporter who was there talking to those very Nazis that CPAC says weren't there, saying our reporter was carrying the water for Hamas in his reporting of the recent Middle East conflict. Really, guys? Well, NBC News has the receipts, including both photo and video evidence of prominent white supremacists attending the event. Now, unless this was someone other than a Nazi giving a Nazi salute in the lobby of the conference hotel, well, there you have it. They are letting literal Nazis into their den of idolatrous Trump worship. I guess it makes sense, since CPAC goes beyond just Trump worship by also serving as the coming together of those pushing white replacement theory and anti-immigrant bigotry. And not far from that conference in Washington, D.C., you have almost the entirety of the Republican Party in Congress worshiping Trump, too. You have this guy.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it.
Even Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who clearly knows better, is reportedly in talks to endorse Trump, despite the fact that Trump has repeatedly mocked him, reportedly calling him a done son of a B word, not to mention repeatedly mocking his wife and former Trump cabinet member Elaine Chao. McConnell is preparing to kiss the ring. And today, McConnell, along with Speaker Mike Johnson, who just last week made the pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago for the mandatory thumbs-up photo with the man pulling his strings, joined Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries at the White House with President Biden to discuss the looming government shutdown. Now, of course, if there's any potential to prevent a government shutdown, it's not McConnell or Johnson who will decide that. They will need to turn to the party's real leader, Geppetto himself, Donald Trump. And right now, Trump's concern has nothing to do with whether the government shuts down. He may actually prefer it, believing it will somehow help him in the upcoming election. Remember, he wants the economy to crash before November. And that is where his concern lies. Not to become president to provide for the American people. No, no, no. It's all to save himself from accountability from the 91 criminal charges that keep him awake at night. It's clearly driving him crazy. Just look to his low-grade Twitter knockoff, where he screams in all caps that all these fake political prosecutions must be immediately halted. And part of that is because he's also really worried about all those legal bills. And it's not just the tens of millions of dollars he continues to need to pay for his lawyers. There's also the matter of the more than $500 million he owes from his civil judgments, including the fact that the meter is still running on his New York civil fraud trial to the tune of $114,000 a day in interest, on top of the $355 million principal. That explains why he's so desperate to get complete control of the RNC, to help cover his legal costs. And to make that happen, he's pushing for Trump loyalists to run the RNC, including his own daughter-in-law, Lara Trump. And what you're seeing is the entire Republican Party rolling over for him, even though he is a weakened candidate, as we've seen, based off his latest primary wins, where he has lost about 40% of the vote and faced problems not just with independent voters, but also with a large swath of Republican voters who are not willing to drink the MAGA Kool-Aid and who say they will not vote for him once he is a convicted felon. It's a problem that Trump may very well see again tonight in Michigan. Joining me now is Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino and an MSNBC contributor, and Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, and a former Republican strategist. Thank you both for being here, my friends. Rick Wilson, Nazis, really?
Yeah, you know, look, there's a problem with this. My grandmother used to call it the turd in the punch bowl. Once you have a turd in the punch bowl, it's not punch anymore. Once you have one Nazi in the door, you're not a conservative organization anymore. You're a pro-Nazi organization. And the fact that these people were there on the floor, perfectly comfortable, the fact that these people are circulating there now, because they are all part of a philosophy that Steve Bannon infected the GOP with called no enemies to my right. Which is why they were fine with Charlottesville at a certain level, which is why they're fine with these people. They look at these people as their shock troops, as their best guys, as the people that are going to go out there and metaphorically or literally swing at their enemies.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Matt Schlapp should be ashamed of himself.
For a lot of reasons.
But for a lot of reasons. But he has no possibility of understanding just how corrupt and corrupted this is. Once you're okay with Nazis there, and like they clearly like to see the PR damage.
Yeah.
But the guys were in the facility, you know, giving the Heil Hitler. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. One is too many.
Yeah, and I mean the Nazis have been marching in Tennessee, Maria. They've been marching in Florida. In some cases, carrying signs, banners for DeSantis. He says nothing. They say nothing. Let me play for you just a compilation of some of what they were saying about immigration at CPAC, because what's driving this, the Nazis vote too, kind of keep them all in the tent kind of attitude, is that there is this like hysteria about immigration. Here they are at CPAC talking immigration.
The immigration issue is extremely simple. Seal the border, deport all the illegals.
Who the hell can win when you have 16 million people pouring into our country from places unknown? They have diseases nobody's ever even heard about. I'm sorry. I feel badly for the people, but we don't want to have this contagion in our country.
Our leaders are determined to repeat every mistake that led to the collapse of empires before us. Here are just a few of the common themes from history: mass immigration and infiltration by foreigners who don't share our values and culture or even our language.
Contagion. They get even a Jewish fellow, Stephen Miller, and Ben Carson, an African-American, to say it, to say the words, to say the things. It's happening.
I think one of the biggest challenges is for us to remember what was life under Trump when he was president.
Sure.
And it was a constant anxiety across all of America. And we seem to forget that those words that they speak of actually have consequences. It was the El Paso massacre, the person who conducted that Venice crime against Latinos that was inspired by Trump's then president's feed saying that there was a mass Mexican invasion. And 23 people lost their lives. Those words are going to translate into something else. And what my hope is that as we are going into the State of the Union from the President of the United States, is that he uses that opportunity to remind the American people the contrast between him and Trump, and that under his presidency, we are a thriving multicultural America. My concern is for that child right now who is of immigrant descent, which is the majority of us, saying, oh, my goodness, I don't belong, and being othered and being bullied. There's so many incidences that we are seeing right now of racial profiling amongst ourselves that are not even reported because people feel that they cannot. And so what he is actually creating is an incredibly dangerous tension that is going to pit Americans against each other. And you know the only people who benefit from that? He will benefit because you allow grift, but then so do foreign actors and foreign agents.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I'm glad you said we need to remember, because there is this mismemory where people are sort of trying to remember the Trump 4 years as the good old days. 1 million people died of COVID. Kids were being screamed at on basketball courts if they were Latino and called illegals and told get out of the country. I mean, it was an awful time, and people were so exhausted, they elected Joe Biden. But you know what Joe Biden is planning on doing right now? He's going to the border. Both of them, both he and Trump, are going to both do trips to the border. Now, the Biden team is saying they're doing it essentially to shame Republicans who refuse to vote for that border deal, which is, I guess, smart politics. But what do you make of the fact that the response on the Biden side, just as a strategist, is they, too, are going to the border?
Look, they're going to take away the one thing Trump claims he has, which is strength on the border. Biden has offered, and the Democrats have offered, the best and most balanced border security bill that's been out there in 45 years. And the people that are siding with the cartels and the coyotes and the smugglers and all the catalog of demons the Republicans talk about every day, the one guy keeping that border open is Donald Trump.
Yeah, demanding that
he's the one. And Biden has a chance to invert the alleged strength that Trump thinks he has. And if I were Biden, I'd go down there and say, He built a wall that was a joke that we paid for. He never did anything except talk on this. And the dangerous parts of the border, especially on the drugs smuggling side, the fentanyl smuggling side, those are people who now rely on Donald Trump for their business model.
Yeah, and look, he's going in the midst of these polls. Let's just look at this. Is illegal immigration a very serious problem? 91% of Republicans say yes. 41% of Democrats, too. And so it's become a thing where it's increased among every single group from 2015 up to 2024. It's a shared concern.
Well, and I think one of the things that we all also have to realize is that by the time that someone gets to the border, Joy, that is not our immigration policy.
Right.
We have to recognize that the reason that we got to this moment was that Trump himself dismantled a lot of the programs where people could go ahead and file for some sort of visa or work permit in their home countries. And in an effort to rebuild that, you had COVID that really upended Latin America specifically. You had close to 16 million middle-class Latin Americans that went directly into lower class. They went into poverty, and there was no response internationally from any of this.
Yeah.
So as the president goes in and talks about how tricky the situation is, how it's a Western hemispheric issue, I hope he also recognizes that there are essential workers that are demanding relief, that have been here for 10, 20, 30 years, that have been paying their taxes, who have American children who are ready to vote for him if he actually recognizes their contributions.
But as you have probably noticed, things have gotten really out of control in Alabama, Missouri, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. Just last week, neo-Nazis marched down the streets of Nashville in broad daylight, carrying flags with swastikas. While those modern-day Hitler fans were marching in the streets, Tennessee House Republicans were passing laws that banned different flags. On Monday, they approved a bill that would ban ideological flags in schools, including pride flags and Black Lives Matter flags. It will not surprise you that the bill does not, I repeat, does not explicitly prohibit the display of the Nazi or the Confederate flag in schools, because there's nothing wrong with those. Republicans have also advanced a bill that would make street protests a felony. Democrats pointed out that such a law would have prevented John Lewis and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has also signed a law that allows public officials to refuse to perform same-sex marriages if it goes against their beliefs. While Republicans are clearly targeting same-sex couples, the law opens the door to people refusing to marry people for a whole host of reasons, including race, religion, and national origin. Joining me now is Tennessee State Representative Justin Jones. Representative Jones, what in the hell is going on in your state?
Well, Joy, the former Confederacy continues to be a birthplace of bad ideas.
Clearly.
And the terrifying thing is that this is where they're testing out these ideas before they nationalize them, that these ideas are being waged, the battles are being waged on the front lines of our state houses, but they're going to be nationalized if we don't stop them at their root, which is in states like Tennessee and Alabama and Texas and Mississippi. Yeah. These are the front lines where we have to fight for democracy. I
saw I reposted actually your Instagram, because you were actually there when the Nazis were marching through Nashville. How is it that they're now pushing through a law that would ban marches for Black Lives Matter, but not Nazi marches?
I mean, they're showing us who they are. Just yesterday, as I tried to tell them that their policies attacking immigrants, attacking the LGBTQ community, banning Black history, are inviting these neo-Nazis to come, I was silenced by the Speaker of the House and stopped from speaking. And when we try and raise these concerns that we are welcoming hate, at the same time we are banning pride flags from our schools.
Yeah.
I mean, it is creating this morally insane environment where you're not even engaging. There's the saying, speak truth to power. We're speaking truth to insanity. At least we're trying to, and we're not silent.
I think we have a picture of you with your hand raised. I mean, this was, and you said it was 2 hours. We were talking in the break. It was like 2 hours of you not being recognized, not being allowed to speak, silence to get on the floor. They're now pushing through a law that if you are expelled, which you were, and Justin Pearson and, of course, Ms. Gloria were also expelled, you couldn't actually run again. That's their new plan. Do you think they're planning to expel y'all again?
I mean, and that bill passed the House last night I wasn't even allowed to speak on that bill. And this is just showing us that they are so intent on silencing voices of dissent because they're trying to show us that this is not a multiracial democracy anymore. And so there are threats that we may be expelled, but we're not afraid of that because what they're trying to do is intimidate us. These are tactics of intimidation. These are tactics of trying to re-wage their lost fight last year when they expelled us and we walked back 3 days later. This is what they're trying to stop, but they cannot stop the momentum, the movement, the light that is shining in Tennessee and across the South.
There was even an attack on a Grammy winner. So there was a proclamation that was supposed to honor Allison Russell, who is a black country music artist, but allowing a similar measure to pass for a group called Paramore, who are white. That seems so obvious that you would think they wouldn't try it, but they did.
They did. I mean, they went after a black queer immigrant woman who has spoken about a more inclusive state and who had a song that she won a Grammy for called Eve is Black, and they didn't like the title.
They didn't like the title?
They didn't like the title of the song because, again, trying to erase people's identity, trying to erase reality and erase history.
Let's talk about these last two things, because the one about pride flags being banned, what would that mean? So you couldn't have a pride flag in your class. Would that actually mean you'd be fired?
You can be
arrested.
You can be fired. You can be sued. I mean, this is just the madness that we're dealing with. Is that when they were questioned, they had actually an amendment to make so you can keep Confederate flags in classrooms because they're considered quote unquote battle flags. But pride flags, which say you are welcome here, which are about inclusivity, they feel are a threat to their dominant narrative of white Christian nationalism. That's really what this was about last night. And rather than address this and answer questions, the sponsor and the speaker were cowards and chose to shut down debate and not let us even talk about this and ask the questions that our constituents sent us down there to ask.
Is there any sign that voters in Tennessee are going to start punishing Republicans for this? Because we could just do 10 more of these. You know, I was telling you, I watched the Tennessee Holler on social media. They do 10 of these a day. Is there any sign that voters have had enough and are going to start voting these people out?
I mean, we're seeing a movement that is rising up, that is multiracial. We're seeing people in rural counties saying we're tired of this because they're getting ready to vote on vouchers, which are going to destroy these rural public school districts. And so we already have more rural hospitals closed per capita than any other state. And so either they're going to wake up or they're going to find themselves in a place where, you know, that they can't get out of. And so what is happening is that we need to continue to shine light to show that they're hurting their own people when they're attacking public education, when they're keeping people in poverty, jobs, when they're denying them health care. This is your rural district. And so we need people to say that, to put that reality over these tactics of division of white supremacy, because that's their strategy, is to divide us and make us not talk about how we are fighting the same system that is a small group of extremists who are controlling our state.
The last bill I want to talk about is this marriage bill, because it does appear that it will allow public officials to refuse to marry people based on LGBTQ. But is there anything that would block somebody who, there was a famous Tennessee pastor who 10 years ago said he wouldn't marry people that were interracial couples? Could that also be, somebody could say, I'm not going to marry an interracial couple?
I mean, this is what this is opening the door for. And this is what they want to open the door for. They're taking us back in time. Literally, Joy, every day we're in that building, you got to set your clock back 50 years because that's what's happening. And so this is terrible, but really what it should be clarifying for us. That we have to take these people seriously. We have to fight them. This is not a time to try and make friends with these folks, these extremists in our legislature. Like I tell them, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make change for my district. And what that means, being silenced or being expelled, whatever it means, we're going to fight for their people too, for their constituents too. And I hope that the people of Tennessee, the Republicans particularly, wake up and say that these folks are not serving their interests, because what is happening is that they are using them as pawns and getting them to come out and say, this is about beating up on a few young black men, but really this is about beating up on our system of democracy that is silencing them and serving corporate interests. That's what's
and allowing the gun lobby to just run rampant, because anything to do with guns, that will pass. Anything that will make it easier.
That's the only bill we passed after the shooting, the mass shooting in Nashville, was a bill protecting firearms manufacturers from being sued. The only gun bill we've passed in Tennessee since that mass shooting that got national attention last year.
The last time you were here, you were moving to have the speaker sanctioned for his actions as speaker and his attacks on yourself, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson. Any movement on that?
So we have filed our motions. They filed a response. We filed a response motion to that. My attorneys are, now we're waiting for the judges to respond. But Speaker Sexton continues to act unconstitutionally. He continues to be the George Wallace of the 21st century, the Bull Connor of the 21st century. And they're trying to ban history because when history looks down on where he stood in this time, his children will be ashamed, and that he's shaming the South. But we represent a new South, and we're unafraid.
You definitely are unafraid. That is for sure. Tennessee State Representative Justin Jones, glad you were in D.C. and able to come on set and talk with us. Good luck and Godspeed. We'll be right back.